Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand. Today, my guest is former WWE superstar, commentator, ring announcer, manager. He's done it all. You may remember him as Ricardo Rodriguez. Jesus, how's it going, my friend?
I am excited. I know it's a little different here on our end because it's 7 o'clock in the morning here at this moment. Um, I wake up early. I'm an early bird, but I know it may not be the same for others. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited to be here. It's a great way to start the day.
Good, thank you. I appreciate that. So let me start off by asking, what made you want to get into professional wrestling?
Oh man. So I think it's a lot more like with everybody that was younger, right? We see it on TV and you're like, hey, this is kind of cool. I mean the showmanship, the spectacle. I was a little different because I used to watch Lucha Libre in Mexico before, the American pro wrestling. So like the whole pageantry, the elaborate acrobatics, that was beautiful, that was amazing to me. And then to me they were like real life superheroes, so that concept really inspired me to, hey, this is kind of cool, I like this. And then that was when I was a little kid, and then eventually as I got older I grew out of it for a little bit. And right after high school, around high school, end of high school, is when I really started getting back into it. um, it was WrestleMania 17. It was a TLC match with the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. And there was that one moment where Jeff Hardy was hanging from the title, from the little ringer thing,
Hmm.
and then Edge speared him off of the ladder. That was, to me, that was the moment where I was like, I got to do this. I want to do this.
So, you grew up a fan, you got out a little bit, and then you started to get back into it. So, after watching that match, what made you decide that you were going to pursue this? Like, this is something you were going to do?
That was it. That was that moment that made me. I was like, I want to try this. I want to do this. And I started doing backyard wrestling for a little
Hmm.
bit. Obviously, I know we don't condone it per se, but like so many of us did it,
Hmm.
and so many of us are still gonna do it. Um, and then yeah, so I did that for a little bit. I was in Los Angeles, California. I found this little group called BBW EWA, not that kind of BBW. Um, so I found this little group, and then they had a boxing ring. So they did backyard shows. I joined them. I started doing a little backyard wrestling. We had shows. Um, we would fly. I would make these awesome flyers, awesome to me at least. To us it was cool. It was like a legit indie fed again, to us. We would go to PWG. We would go to PWG and flyer PWG. Um, and yeah, and then it just kind of went from there. I met somebody there who, his name is Joe Medina, who was a lucha libre promoter. He liked what a friend of mine and I were doing, and then he booked us for one show. He liked us, and then he's like, "Hey, would you want to be actually like trained?" So then, yeah, we signed up with him, and then we did lucha libre for like a year or so, and then eventually it just kind of went from there.
So, you trained under him for a year, and then you started wrestling, or you were wrestling as you were
So I was
training?
we were doing backyard wrestling. So
Yeah.
we and then whatever I was learning with my trainer at the time, I would take it back with my backyard guys, and then we would show them. Um, I know there's a lot of similar stories from back in LA where people were doing that too. So it wasn't like out of the ordinary for somebody to basically take the bullet and then get beat up at training and then take it back to their guys.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, I was training under it was Joe Medina's company, but my trainer was Latigo Blanco. That was his ring name, and he trained me, man, and then he would beat the living dog shit out of us. Excuse me, he would beat us up like neck. But honestly, to me, I enjoyed it so much, um, and I'm beyond grateful for it. I'm beyond grateful for the way he trained us, and I'm beyond thankful for it because it made me appreciate things a lot more.
Hmm.
Uh, and then he would explain things to us, and then I loved it. I loved it.
So after you did this for a year, did you stay in the California area, or what point did you start venturing out?
When I first started actually getting out there, it was mostly in California. LA is big.
Hmm.
LA, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Bernardino. It's all one big area. So there's a lot to do there.
Hmm.
There's a lot of opportunities in that area. All of Southern California. It's massive and it's very condensed. So it's all together. Um, so between that, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Northern California, there was so much wrestling available. So like to venture out, yeah, of course you want to like get out of there, but there was a lot there. There was a lot of big stuff going on in that area, so it was kind of cool. And then eventually, once I started getting out, I started getting out in Europe. So I
Hmm.
started going out to Mexico, to Europe, quite a bit. Germany was my main focus when I was traveling was Germany. I was back and forth between there. I did stuff in England, France, Italy, and then in 2010 is when I got my opportunity with WWE. I did a tryout at the Staples Center. It was on August 10th of 2010.
Hmm.
I did a tryout. It went well. They had asked me. I was like, hey, we have something going on tomorrow. Would you be able to do it? So I went. I did the ring announcing Alberto thing, and it just kind of stuck.
So how did your tryout come about? How did that get set up?
I ended up doing a show for a long term promoter in Southern California named Jesse Hernandez from Empire Wrestling Federation, and I worked for him
Hmm.
once, and then he goes, and I had never met him prior to the booking. Um, I got booked through somebody else,
Hmm.
and he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, WWE's coming into town in about 2 months. Would you be interested in doing a tryout?" So I was like, "Yeah, of course." And at the time, I didn't watch too much WWE because my job I worked as a graphic designer, and at the time, um, I was on salary, and we were very heavy on projects.
Hmm.
So like between training, getting home, long days at work, I wasn't watching WWE. And then at the time, this is before like DVR and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so I wouldn't before Twitter and all that stuff. So I wouldn't know what was going on until we read like the results on the dirt sheets. Um, so I don't know who was who. I don't know what was going on. I don't know the storylines. So then I brushed up as much as I could in those 2 months. And when I did the tryout at the Staples Center, we got there probably like around was like 10 in the morning, and then we did matches for a couple hours. Um, we ended up doing this little tournament style where they took the people that they liked and they put them up against each other, like back to back. And at the end, it was myself and this one guy named Mercurio Jr. Um, I thought we did well, and then shortly thereafter, as we were excused to, like that we were done, I got asked if I was available to do this ring announcing gig the next day in Bakersfield, California. To which obviously I said yes. I went, I did the whole thing. I was nervous as hell, and then it just kind of happened from there. It just became a recurring thing for 4 year 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Um, so that's kind of how it went down, and
So after that, how long before they offered you your deal, like to go down to
it was
Tampa?
on the spot. They offered me the spot on the spot. They offered me the deal.
What?
That same day, both there was three of us, myself, Alex Kozlov,
Hmm.
from Ring of Honor, CMLL, New Japan. He got offered the deal too, and then Miro, Alex Rusev, got offered the deal. So three of us got hired the same day. Alex, I think, was finishing up some contracts dates he had with AAA, and then Miro, because of his visa, took a little longer to get to FCW. But I mean, Miro's still doing his thing with AEW,
Hmm.
so we all got signed the same day. We're all from the same place in Los Angeles, so like it was kind of cool that the three of us got picked up, and we all went different routes, but um, yeah, we got to encounter a lot of good success.
I
So it was kind
agree.
of cool.
How was your transition to Tampa?
I hated it at first. Being Latino, we're very family oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I was ever away from my family.
Mm-hmm.
That first, because I got signed in August after I did my medical. I did the whole thing, and I finally moved. It was around October, so the holidays were about to start.
Mm-hmm.
So the holiday season was about to start. This was my first time away from family. So that first winter sucked. It was terrible. Um, I had an advantage though that I was on the road, so I was busy and I kept going. But then I would be home
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of days, and Christmas, Thanksgiving, the holidays,
Yeah.
the times you're usually with your family. That came about, but after a while, you just kind of get used to it, and it's the life that we chose.
Yeah. So, what was your first initial thoughts of FCW? Was it everything you thought it'd be?
I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't even know that was like the way to go. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was doing. Um, I was very different though in the way that I kind of came about it because I got signed right away. I didn't have to go to a developmental to
Mm-hmm.
do a year or two before they found out what they were going to do with me to go up to the main roster.
Mm-hmm.
I started on the main roster and then they put me on the live events from the beginning. So I was only down at FCW for like 2 days a week. Um, I would get home on a Wednesday, go to promo class, and if depending what time we got there, um, I would either just check in and then leave, or if it was a late day that our travel day,
Mm-hmm.
or if we got early, then we would do promo class with Dusty and then call it a day, and that was it. And then Thursday they had tapings
Mm-hmm.
or their shows, so like we wouldn't train, and then Friday I was back on the road. Um, so my story was very different, and I feel like there was a lot of resentment from some of the guys because I was only there for 2 days and I'll be leaving
Mm-hmm.
because I got signed from on the spot.
FCW, and I've talked with many different people. It just seems like when they did FCW, it was wrestlers, models, football players. It was everybody they could throw and just like kind of see what they could throw against the wall and see what would stick.
Yeah,
So
sure.
there was a lot of resentment. It seems like with certain types of people
I feel
getting.
like that's still a thing. I feel like that's still a thing because there are people there that they put in the hard work and the time on the independence,
Hmm.
and then they bring in models, those sports athletes. Um, so I can see that that's still being a thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, the chances of the guys that put in the
Hmm.
effort on the indies, that will always be a thing, and that will always they will always have an advantage because they already understand the wrestling aspect of it. We just have to teach them how to be personas, how to be
Hmm.
characters, bigger than life, how to be superstars. Um, it wasn't until I was there that I kind of more so understood, at least to my understanding, um, how that whole process works.
Hmm.
And again, this is just to my understanding. And then now that for the last several years I've been teaching, sometimes it's better to get them fresh
Hmm.
without any experience because then you can mold them to however you need them or you want them.
Hmm.
Um, it is nice when they come in with some sort of experience because you can already jumpstart or jump ahead on certain things on the basics fundamentals. You just have to clean them up.
Hmm.
So there's a pros and cons to both sides of that side of that thing. Um, but when they're brand new, they're fresh. If they're athletes, they already have the discipline,
Hmm.
uh, and that's so hard to teach. That's so hard to teach the discipline to guys. So hey, stay in shape, eat right, stay healthy, don't
Hmm.
do stupid stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so that aspect, I understand why they want to get athletes because they already have discipline.
Yeah.
And like I said, you just mold them. And then with the training regimen that they have at FCW or at NXT now, at the Performance Center, like they're training, every day,
Hmm.
4 days a week, and then they're wrestling 3 days. Um, but on the other hand, you have these guys who are already they have already been around for a while on the independents, so they already understand like how to wrestle, and
Hmm.
that I will. That will be like a big head start on this whole process. You just have to teach them again, like I said, how to be stars
Mm-hmm.
and how to market themselves and how to be on TV. Um, so there's pros and cons to both sides of that, though. Honestly, but I can see where that resentment comes in, though.
Mm-hmm. So you did a little wrestling in FCW too. When did you start doing more in-ring stuff down there?
My first match, I think it was December 10th of 2010. It was under the mask. I used to wrestle on the Independence as Chimera, which was a mask character. It was this guy on the Independence. Um, so that's why I used to wrestle as on Independence. So like I got to wrestle as that for a couple times
Mm-hmm.
in FCW, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to wrestle, with baby Roman Reigns, young Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Biggie Langston, all those guys. Bray Wyatt before he was Bray Wyatt when he was Husky Harris, and then
Mm-hmm.
he was Axel Mulligan, and then also too once he turned into Bray Wyatt. So I got to wrestle with a lot of amazing folks that we were given. I was put in that responsibility list of, hey, we have these guys that we're trying to build up. Can you get in there with them and working with them and help them?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get it at the time, and I didn't understand that process of why they kept putting me in those situations. I was like, why are you putting me with these guys over and over and over and over again? I didn't get it until later on. I understood, like, they trusted me to guide this person, to help them, teach them whatever they thought I was going to teach them. Especially, I did the same thing on the main roster with the mask. I used to go in the name of El Local,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a persona that was used because Ricardo doesn't know how to wrestle, but El Local can. Um, So they were putting me in situations where they were having me help out the guys that were coming up. Now, again, in hindsight, 2020, in hindsight, um, I didn't get it, but after the fact, I was like, all right, they trusted me that I can guide these people. So that was kind of cool in hindsight.
Was there any particular favorite moments in FCW?
Mm. I don't know if I want to say favorite per se, because there's a lot of different times where I had fun, but I didn't spend too much time there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just getting to wrestle with the people that I got to wrestle and then building the relationships that we got to build was awesome. Um, I mean, there was moments that I wasn't involved in that I was there for that were pretty cool. Um, there was this one guy, Austin Spencer, I think was his name. He used to be like the mayor, the actual he ran for mayor. He was a mayor in somewhere in Canada. Um, and then he did this whole thing where he had a match, and I think he legit like messed up his jaw, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then he went to the dentist, and then he got his he needed to get something fixed. So Um, they wired his jaw shut, and then for months he would come in to train, whatever. He would just come in and sit in, and he wouldn't talk. He was my neighbor too. He lived in the same complex as I did, so we would go out, and he wouldn't talk. Um, so then one day he cuts a promo. It was this, mind you, this is months. This is months after where they turn off the lights. You hear him laugh because he had a laugh. He has a laugh, and all of a sudden he starts talking like nothing. So we're like, oh man, the mayor, he's speaking again. Now, mind you, this is months. Um, and it turned out that he was working everybody for months. Um, and I guess he had been working the office too. So the office didn't take too kindly to that. Um, yeah, so I mean, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome because just the way we all reacted to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the office took too kindly to him working the office.
This is a
Uh,
guy that didn't have a belly button either, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. The mayor. Um, oh man, I think I still have like on Facebook, but dude, like I used to love that guy, man. He was super awesome. But like for those couple months, we would like we would go get food, and he wouldn't eat anything, and we would have to make sure we had like a special straw that would fit and like right here. Um, Because they had to. I forget how it goes. He had to have like a special straw. Um, yeah. Oh man, that was crazy. Yeah, he didn't have a belly button either.
So, while you were in FCW, didn't you form a little stable down there for a little bit?
So I came up with this concept, this idea. Because every now and then when I would come into FCW, most of the time for promo class, I never had anything ready. However, I watch a lot of movies, but it's not just to watch them. I legit watch them and I study them. I break them apart. So one of my favorite movies is The Devil's Advocate with Pacino and Keanu Reeves. And so there's this little dialogue where Keanu towards the end of the movie where Al Pacino's like giving his final like, "Hey, this is me. This is what I do. Join me," type of thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then I had that dialogue in my head, and then I show up and I do that dialogue. Thankfully, nobody caught on to it. I think Simon Gotch was like the only one that caught on to where it came from. And then and Dusty loved it. Dusty loved it. So he's like, "Yeah, just keep doing that. Do that again next time around." So the next week, I started doing this whole thing. I think it was with Connor um, from the Ascension. So I did this thing where I was kind of like playing devil's advocate. So he would be standing in the middle of the ring, and I would walk behind him from side to side, and I would tell him, the good and the bad of what he does, whatever. Um, Again, Dusty loved it, and I went up to like Shaw Guerrero. I did the same thing. He's like, "Hey, you're awesome, but you're not your mother. Um, you come from a long, strong lineage of pro wrestling, but you'll never amount to what your dad did." Something the same thing with like Chavo. Um, so then I did that with them too, and I did stuff with Epico, who comes from the great Colon family in Puerto Rico. So I did the same things like, "Hey, you're amazing,
Hmm.
um, but you'll never amount to Carlito." Um, yeah, yeah, he got over it. He was awesome, but he needed an apple. Let me be your apple, right? So that type of thing. Dusty loved it, and then I went up to at the time it was Bram, Thomas Latimer, we did this whole thing, right? So I did this whole thing, and then I came up with this idea of the Ascension. I wanted to become like this a cult leader almost, but I didn't
Hmm.
want it to be like a cult. I wanted it to be more like subliminal, spiritual. I wanted originally seven of us because there's seven chakras.
Hmm.
Um, but Dusty goes like, "Oh, that's too many." I was like, "Oh, that's fine then. Like, let's do five because that we can still create a pyramid." And then let me be the centerpiece, and I want to be like the all-seeing eye, right? So I want to do this whole like Illuminati thing. Um, Mixed with spirituality. So it was I would have been the speaker, Shaw would have been the girl, Epico would have been the cruiserweight, um, Tom would have been like the middle card guy, and then Connor would have been the heavyweight. Connor O'Brien would have been the heavyweight, and then we can alternate with tag teams. So I figured like this would have been a cool little like dynamic, and we started doing a couple little promos, and Dusty was like super in love with them. So that's how the Ascension came about. Fast forward a couple months, and then I come back from on the road on a Wednesday, and I get pulled into the office by Dusty, and then he goes, and I can't do his accent, but let's just pretend it's a Dusty accent. "Oh, Ricardo, baby, I gotta talk to you." So he pulls me into the office, and he's like, and he straight just goes, "You're out of the Ascension." I was like, "What? What happened? What?" Yeah, you're out of the Ascension, baby. It contradicts what you do on TV. And I'm just like, what? So I got kicked out of the Ascension, the group that I created, right? And at the time, I didn't get it. I was upset because I was like, dude, you're kicking me out of the thing I made. But to his credit, I guess he had bigger plans for them.
Hmm.
And then it was contradicting what I was doing on TV on Raw and SmackDown. So I get it.
Yeah.
Um, but long term, it worked out. I was upset though that he turned them into vampires, but this is also around the time of Twilight.
Yeah.
Um, so I was very upset that he made them into vampires at first because I didn't want them to be vampires. Uh, it's like there's this episode of South Park where like it's like the goths versus the emos,
Hmm.
um, and they're like, "We're not freaking goths." But yeah, I was upset. But anyway, so it turned out very well for them after in the long run because the stuff that they did in FCW and then NXT. It
Mhm.
was awesome. As time went on, obviously they broke up and stuff, but when it became Victor and Connor, dude, that was awesome what they did in NXT.
Mhm.
The whole presentation.
I remember the promos where they were on the. It was with Bram still, but they were on the
Mhm.
top of the
Like a,
skyscraper and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that one, yeah. Yep, yep.
So, what was the main difference, with FCW and NXT? Were you down there a lot for that? Because transitional period where they were going from FCW to NXT, and it was a completely. I felt like it was a completely different product. Like you were going from developmental to they want you to be on TV now.
Yeah. So there again, it goes back to the same thing there. Like I wasn't there too much. I was on the road. I was on the
Hmm.
road from the beginning. So I was only there really for 2 days. I hardly ever went to the training center. Um, and when I did, I mean, I would just go and then train with Norman Smiley
Hmm.
or Steamboat. Or Steamboat, I think it was already gone at that time that they moved from Tampa to Orlando. I think Steamboat was already gone, but in Tampa, I was with Steamboat and I was with Smiley, Norman Smiley. Those were my trainers. And then for me, it kind of felt the same. For me, again, I was there during the
Hmm.
transition. So, like I don't think they had fully gotten to the swing of things of what they became because NXT became its own thing.
Hmm.
It still is. It's its own thing. I almost feel like it's its own independent company from WWE. The only thing that they have in common is basically just the
Hmm.
WWE that comes before NXT. Um, but no, it's its own little thing, and it's amazing. And I'll give Triple H credit because that was his whole thing. Him and I think Ryan Ward was like the main writer initially.
Hmm.
Uh, so those two guys, man, like the stuff that they did was awesome. And then Ryan was like centerpiece when it came to all of that. Um, yeah, I believe he was the main writer when NXT first kicked off. Little Ray Ray.
Any favorite? Any favorite WWE moments that stand out?
Oh, dude, of course, there's
Yeah.
so many. My first WrestleMania, my debut,
Hmm.
but they're all for different reasons, right? So, like my
Hmm.
debut in Bakersfield, California, my first WrestleMania in Atlanta, wrestling Bret Hart in Calgary
Hmm.
or Ontario, one of those two. Wrestling John Cena, wrestling Rey Mysterio. The first time I got to wrestle Rey Mysterio, the very first 619 that I took from Rey Mysterio. Um, being a part of at the time, being a part of Edge's last match,
Hmm.
um, being Bret Hart's to if I'm not, and I could be mistaken, but I think I'm still Bret Hart's last TV match. Um, so working with Mick Foley,
Hmm.
the Royal Rumble, the one that was in, the table spot at TLC in Baltimore. Um, Man, there's so many spots. There's so many times, man, that were amazing. And like the nice thing about experiences that is like these are things that nobody can ever take away from me.
Hmm.
They happen. They're documented. They're out there. People saw them. So nobody can ever take those experiences from me because I lived them. And they were exciting. They were fun. But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. It was pretty cool.
How has life been after WWE?
It was rough at first.
Hmm.
When I called the office and I was like, "Hey, I'm done. I want my release." Um, at first, it was kind of interesting because I was bitter and I was
Hmm.
angry. I hated everything. I hated anything wrestling. I hated WWE. I was upset at everything and anything. Um, that's where I think like my drinking got very heavy because I was trying to find an escape or a way to justify how I was feeling.
Hmm.
Um, but then shortly thereafter, I ended up going to India. I went to India. I opened up the Great Kali School. I was there for 6 months. By the time that I was done with that venture, we had already ran three major events. I basically started. I helped basically start the independent scene there
Hmm.
because after I left, people started branching out afterwards, and then the independent scene started because there was no independent scene.
Hmm.
So now there's an independent scene in India. It's not big, but it's there. Um, I came back to the U.S. and I just kind of hopped around from city to city, just kind of running schools for a little bit, and then I was very thankful for him. for everybody that gave me a shot. And then after a while, I was like, all right, I'm done, and I would just move on to the next place. Um, but during that time frame, I got very heavily involved with alcohol, because I was always on the go. I had nothing to like keep me anywhere. And yeah, I just kept making bad choice after bad choice in life, um, and just kind of like where anywhere that I went, I would always find a way to find my fix of booze. Um, I got the chance to spend time. Well, I did time in San Antonio. I did time in obviously in Orlando, in Los Angeles, Mexico City. I used to help run or produce Nacion Lucha Libre. That was Alberto's lucha company down in Mexico City. So I got to spend time doing that down there. The last when COVID hit, I think that's probably the hardest part because there was nothing to do. There was
Mhm.
nothing to do. We had time, money. Um, so that first year of COVID was rough. Um, I know a lot of people fell into addiction during that time frame. I was not an exception. Eventually, I got this offer to go to Egypt, so I spent a year in Cairo. I did a year in Cairo, and then when I came back, I fell right back into it, and I ended up going to rehab out here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm at now. When I did my time in the rehab center, when I got out, I kind of liked it here, and I decided to stay. So I stayed here in Lancaster. I opened up through Legacies Wrestling. I opened up my own school. I've had the privilege of of teaching and then opening up other people's schools and then running other people's schools. I never had my own. So um, my business partner, he goes like, "Hey, we'll just do your own thing," and then here we are. It's going to be a year now. In August, I got the keys to the place that I'm at right now in August. Um, and we started running shows in September. So we're about to hit a year that we've been operating, and I'm beyond grateful for it.
That's
That was a lot.
amazing. No,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So where can people reach out to you at? Where can they apply to come train with you?
So if you check out our Facebook at you have to spell it out, Three Legacies Wrestling. You can kind of follow us what we're doing. We also have the website threelegactieswrestling.com. Instagram it's at 3L Wrestling. On Twitter it's the number three Legacies. But we have an amazing show coming up actually on August 19th at the Clipper Magazine Stadium, which is like the local minor league baseball stadium, but it's a very beautiful stadium. Coincidentally, they've won most beautiful stadium three times in a row in the nation. So for the minors. So yeah, so we have that. We have an amazing lineup already. Fandango will be here. Heath Slater, Rhino, myself, Shannon Moore, who you just interviewed not too long ago. So I'm excited for that too. The local stars of the area, Delirious from Ring of Honor, and in the past, Gene Snitsky too. Apologies. So we have a pretty cool little lineup coming up, and then that's in 2.5 weeks already. So it's coming along, man. It's been a cool little adventure so far, honestly.
That's amazing. Let me ask you one final question before we go.
Yeah,
What was if you could give any advice to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
that's a very wide.
As honest as you want, as
Yeah,
blunt as you
that's a very
want.
wide. Um, Obviously the traditional of just go get trained,
Mhm.
get trained, look at a reputable place, a place that will guide you, because there's a lot more to just learning the aspect of how to wrestle. There's so much more. You have to understand the whys of wrestling. That's always going to be the hardest question to answer, is why are you doing this, what's the purpose of it. um, See who came out of there, see who's a main trainer, see what the available times and what works best for you, because there may be different options.
Mhm.
Some places maybe may cost more, but ask yourself, why does it cost more? There must be a reason for it. um because sometimes, because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's better.
It's true.
um yeah, so always keep that in mind. um See, go and talk to them first. Get it before you go and just sign up willy nilly. Just talk to them. Observe. Be observant. Go check it out for like a day or two. See if it's something you may like. Understand too that this is probably not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not everybody is physically or mentally, because this is very mentally draining. So having a very strong support system is very crucial too. There's gonna be a lot of people that are not gonna like that you're doing this. They're gonna, talk down on you. They're gonna make fun of you because this is taboo in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you like that WWE stuff? I watch UFC. It was like, well, that's cool. I don't care. Um, yeah, so there's so many different ways to go about it, but yeah, get trained, and make sure you have a very strong support system because your mental health will take a toll.
Well, I just want to say thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling, what you continue to do. Thank you for coming on today. I know it's been probably 10 years, but I'm glad that we got
Yeah, no, well,
to catch up. You were always good to me. I got to go to WrestleMania 30 because of you, and I appreciate that. I'll never forget that.
of course, man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
If there's anything I can do, feel free to reach out. I'll help promote anything you got going on.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.